The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised. Caution. You are now entering the all-consuming realm of Shay's Paranormal Chat, where the things that are better left unsaid are actually said.
Shut up and sit down.
You're listening to Shay's Paranormal Chat. Paranormal podcasting done Shay's way. Tons of fun.
Dude, seriously?
A bit sarcastic.
Hashtag investigator, not hunter.
But always real.
Hashtag data, not evidence.
Don't get your panties in a twist.
Oh my god, really?
This is real, raw conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Good evening, everybody. TGIF, as always, my favorite night of the week, especially since I get to be with this beautiful co-host of mine. How you doing, Kelly?
Oh, you're crazy, but I'm good. I am good. It's a Friday, and the weekend is starting, and it was beautiful weather, so I'm good.
Yeah, it was pretty nice here, too. So, I am very excited tonight to be talking about reincarnation and past lives. I'm not as excited to have to say these names without butchering them, though. Oh, let's see. So, tonight we have Dr. David Bettenhausen and Carla Bogni-Kidd. How you guys doing?
Great, very good.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Did I butcher them?
No.
Oh,
You did great.
Hey, brownie points for me.
you could say Dave or Dr. Dave if you must the rest of the night and never say my last name again.
I pretty much got yours right away. I don't know why I had trouble with her. I don't know. I'm happy you guys are on. It's going to be a fun show.
Great to be
I'm
here.
excited.
Yes.
I'm excited.
So, before we get into us grilling you with all these questions, and do you wanna tell us a little bit about the backstory, how you guys met, how you know each other?
Sure.
We'll give you a little story, and Carla will start off and kind of fill it.
Okay, so back in 2014, we were implementing electronic medical records in the office. And, we're old, so we were used to charts and paper and all of those things. So switching to electronic medical records was really stressful for us. And I came in one day and I said to Dave, either I'm going to call a counselor for you or we need to start meditating or something because you're just grouchy. And he said, okay, I'll try the meditation. So we did, and we began one day with the entire office.
And we started to meditate every day, and it really did calm me down because, like Carla said, I'd become really grouchy. I had worked with Carla for 16 years in the office. I bought the practice that she was an office manager in, and she stayed with me. And so we started together, and we'd really become best of friends. until this electronic stuff started, and I became grouchy, and she wanted to kick me out of the office a few days. A few days she didn't want me to do anything. Sometimes she didn't want to talk to me. We started to meditate, and so you can imagine that as we're meditating, there became a day where I thought I was talking to Carla's mother while meditating. And Carla's mother had died 20 years ago. And so that, as a physician, I thought that was a little strange. This woman who looked like Carla from a side view, who had eyelashes that looked like hers, was very happy-go-lucky, and she showed me a shoe, and I went in because Carla, I've known her forever, and I said, Carla, I think I saw your mother, and she showed me a shoe. What'd you do?
Well, I went over to the computer and I Googled ballroom dancing shoes, and maybe 60 or 70 pair appeared on the screen. And I said to Dave, pick out which one you saw. And he chose the exact shoe that my mother always wore. She was a ballroom dancer. And she also wore that shoe like for dress up or to church because it was, like an open-toed sandal. And, it was impossible. He never met her. He never saw her feet or her shoes. He could not have known what shoes she wore all of those years. So that was our first aha moment.
And then we continued to meditate. And I had this moment where I was meditating at home, actually. And I felt like I had been shot. And I felt this thump in my chest. I actually fell out of the bed, knocked the nightstand over, and the lamp fell on me. And as I'm laying there bleeding to death, I look across the alley that I'm standing in, and Carla's standing there. And she's dressed like a flapper. She doesn't look exactly like Carla, but she reminds me of Carla. And she has the same steel blue eyes that Carla has. So I know it's Carla, and I see her. And so the next day I went into the office and I told her the story. I said, I don't know what kind of dream I'm having or what this is, but we thought it was strange. I kept meditating, and I got more of the story. And I found out her name was Ruby Donaldson. She was born in Bullock, Georgia. I found out that this was in Chicago in the 1920s. I found out that she was a flapper who worked for some mobster named Angelo. And I told her all those details. And then there came a day that Carla wasn't working, and what happened?
So he called me and gave me some of this information, and I thought to myself, I really want proof. At this point, I didn't know, is Dave imagining things, or he was a pretty well-rounded person. He was normal, about as pure as the driven snow, so I didn't feel like he was lying to me. So I got onto Ancestry.com, and I found Ruby Donaldson, born in 1904 in Bullock, Georgia, to James and Anna Donaldson. She was one of 11 children. I saw her birth certificate, and I saw the marriage certificate of her parents and different birth certificates of her sisters and brothers. And then I also found a picture of, or an article in a newspaper about the wedding of Angelo Genna to a woman named Lucille Spinola. And it was January the 10th, 1925. And also I found another article, a picture of their wedding cake. And the reason that was in the newspaper is because the cake itself was over 10 feet tall. It served over 3,000 mobsters. So I called Dave back and I said, this is what I found. So, that kind of corroborated what he was telling me. Because these were names and things we didn't know anything about. I never heard of Angelo Genna. But this showed that Dave and I obviously had a past life together before this life, because this was in the 1920s. But we had met before in this life, unbeknownst to us.
Yeah, because
when was that, Dave?
I had another memory while I was meditating one day, and that memory was in 1962. I was running on a beach in Boston. I had grown up in Nebraska. My father was going to graduate school in Boston that summer. And as I was running on the beach, this little girl yelled at me and said, "Stop it, you're bothering my family." She ran over, pushed me down, sat on my chest, and gave me a kiss on the forehead. Then she jumped up, she put her hands on her hips. She had this little two-piece blue ruffled bathing suit. She looked kind of pissed off. But then I heard in the background her mother yell, "Carla, little girls don't act that way."
Actually, she said, "Carla, little girls don't act that way." She had that thick Boston accent. But I remember this always, not just through meditation, because I was the baby of 5 girls, good Catholic family. Mother and father were always getting separated, but they always got back together again because they were a good Catholic family. But this particular day, we didn't have a car. We were not well off. All of us, we got 2 cabs, and the cabs took us to Revere Beach. And in the old days, of course, Revere Beach had the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster and all of those things. And when we got there, for some reason, I didn't have a bathing suit, which was strange because I never got a new bathing suit anyway. I would have inherited one from my sisters. So all 7 of us went across the street to one of those souvenir shops, and I got my first 2-piece blue ruffled bathing suit. And I remembered it because I never had anything new, number one. Number 2, it was a 2-piece. And I remembered it because my family was together. We were spending the day together, and that meant a lot.
So if you can imagine, at this point, we have realized that we met in 1962 and then did not see each other again for 36 years.
That is awesome.
And then we found out that we had a past life memory together from 1925, before we were even born. Now, I'm a physician, so some of this sounded a little far-fetched for me.
Mm.
However, we were getting details every day. We started meeting. I met my spirit guide, whose name was Isabella, who talked to me. We got lessons every day. We soon started journaling everything we found out. We soon after, when I say soon, it took us almost 5 years, we found 29 lives together. I've had 42, Carla's had 34, but 29 of them were together. So it became, not only was it exciting, not only did I think I was crazy a few times, but it became sort of our obsession, and that's one of the reasons we wrote the book, The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth, because I really didn't know any of this could exist before this happened.
Now, Carla, did you believe in reincarnation before this?
Yes.
You did.
I've always been really open about everything, astrology, going to mediums, all of those things. But when this first happened and he said he was talking to my mother, I thought, well, why the hell is she coming to you? Why isn't she coming to me? And I guess we got that answered because Dave is the one with the best ability to be able to reach the spiritual world. And my mother was the first person he met. And then he met Isabella, his spirit guide. And then he met my spirit guide, Elizabeth, who I can see off and on. But Dave can hear them and see them and feel them and all of the above. And then there came a day when Dave came into the office and he was really emotional. And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, you're not going to believe this. I'm very curious and I ask questions constantly." That was one of the reasons we had so many journals, because I ask and I ask and I ask, and we wrote everything down. But there came a day when I asked him, "Well, who is God?" And Dave, tell her what happened.
God said, "I am." And I started to cry because it felt like this incredible emotional experience. Warmth, kindness, love, everything overcame me. As I continued to have that conversation, we found out that God is both male and female, complete in all ways together. still only one being. But after that moment, there was no way we couldn't keep asking questions. We had no way to avoid asking questions because this was something new to us, especially with both of us were raised Catholic.
Right.
We both still believe in God. And God has been through this entire experience. And we've really discovered that reincarnation was God's plan from the beginning. Just like any loving parent, you get chance after chance. You don't just get one chance and you go off to hell. And one day God said, there is no hell. And those kind of things we just had to get out. Because there has to be some people that are worried because they were raised Catholic, that they get this one chance if they haven't done their life perfectly. They're going off to eternal damnation. And it's just not the case.
Yeah, that's always been a theory that's kind of boggled me because it's like nobody is going to be able to perfect this in one try, and you get one opportunity to say pass or fail. That seems more strict than a loving God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, than I would ever expect it to be. You know, any spirit that drives my life is not going to be that strict. Plus, they know I'm ridiculously flawed. So, you know.
We're all flawed. That's the thing, Kelly. You know, it really gets to the point where if you start looking at nature, everything evolves. Plants grow. Seeds get planted. The plants come back. The new tree comes up. It's not surprising that if nature looks that way, that God had a plan a little bit like this too.
Do you think that we keep coming back until we've learned everything that we've needed to and then go somewhere? Or
yes.
Absolutely. I think the plan is to learn all these lessons. As you go through these lives, you learn new lessons. And at some time, you start to make a choice that's truly loving. One of the things Isabella taught us was what she calls the 5 simple rules. Live without conceit, jealousy, selfishness, and unforgiveness, and always love. When you do that, you don't create more karma, you don't create more lessons, you don't need to come back, and then you return back to God because you finally, if you want to say matured, but you've really made and learned all those choices that gives you a chance to go back to heaven the way God planned it from the beginning.
Yep.
So the way that
Go ahead, Kelly.
The way reincarnation has always been explained to me is that, and when I explain to me, I'm talking from the spirits that I talk to, is that we do have those people that we encounter throughout our multiple lifetimes, and it's always been called a soul family. So obviously you and Carla are part of the same soul family. Have you guys found other people that are in your lives that are also part of that soul family?
Yes, absolutely. My husband, Tom, has been with us like 16 other lives. My sister, Paula, has been with us many, many, many times. Two of the other office girls, actually, that we worked with have been with us many times. Yes, we call them family mates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We just sort of divided up into family mates and karmic mates because certainly there are those people in your life that are meant to test you or are difficult for you to deal with, and so there may be some karma related there that you have to continue to return with them until you get through your lessons with them also. So some of the other things that were interesting lessons for us. And Carla and I were actually talking about this today. Since we have 3 women moderating and we haven't had that yet. So we got the women power going today. So we actually went through and even looked at our book a little bit because there's series of lessons in the book that start to come out. one of the lessons is no one is owned by another. And I don't know, Carla, if you want to talk about this just a little bit.
Sure, love to. No one owns another. That doesn't mean just, a man shouldn't own a woman shouldn't own a man. But for instance, as far as we don't use the word twin flame or soulmate the way others do. Mm-hmm. A twin flame is supposedly a split portion of a soul, but God creates us whole and individually. We don't need a twin flame to complete us, but we do have intendeds in our lives, and they are meant to complement us, our qualities, not to complete us. Now, having said that, in all of my lives, 34 of them, in one of my very first lives, it was 3700 BC, I was an orphan, and I was owned by wealthy Thracian warlords, and I was made their shepherd girl. And Dave was actually a neighbor. He was a shepherd boy. But I was owned. And then in another life after that, 2900 BC, Dave and I were raised like brother and sister, but to become Egyptian kings and queens. We were owned. We had no choice. We were forced to become kings and queens, and we didn't want that. Then after that, 1800 BC, I was a slave. I was owned, raped, and forced to bear a son. In 1250 BC, I was the daughter of a slave master, owned again by my father. In 950 BC, I was a slave to the Queen of Sheba. I never had my own family or children or anything. You can see how I've had this ongoing ownership through many of my lives. A couple of times in 200 AD, I was given in marriage at the age of 12. No choice whatsoever. They just told me I was going to marry somebody at the age of 12, so I did. In the 16...
I'm going to throw something in. Again, Isabella told us about the 5 simple rules. She also said that there are things in the Bible that are just not quite accurate. It's been a great phone. There's been thousands of years that this book was written. The first 3,000 years of history that's in the Bible was written before writing even occurred. It was all written, passed down word of mouth. And I know we've all heard the 10 Commandments. If you realize that the 10 Commandments, as written in the Bible in Deuteronomy, says, do not covet thy neighbor's house, wife, ox, or property, etc. It lists wife as property. And so when you look back on Carla's history, you realize that women have been owned for thousands of years. Now, men too. Certainly slavery and those issues come into effect. But we've got a life where, we're part of the examples in the book is lessons that we all need to learn about equality and the rights of women, rights of men, rights of different nationalities. We've also found in many of our lives that we've been many different religions. And we like to say we're spiritual, not religious. But we also like to say sometimes that there's some reality to learn or some fact to learn in every religion. So we need to look at some of them and learn about all of them. And if we look at some of the other lessons that we've had in some of our past lives, we started to find out that just like Carla had been known as a woman thousands of times, not thousands, but
lots of times.
It also was that I was a warrior in many, many lives. And found out that we were Viking fighting against the Scottish, and English against the Scottish, and back against Scottish against the English. And we realized that in this trip through reincarnation, literally you have to be on every side of every issue. So I fought on both sides of the issue, so you have to realize that in most wars we're literally fighting ourselves. If you look at history, it keeps repeating itself. If you even look at all my warrior past lives, and then I look at my last life, I had a father who was in World War II, and in this life I had a father who was in the Korean War. We keep fighting, and in war, no one wins. So we keep getting these issues over and over again.
Have you guys always come back as the same sex?
That was exactly what I was going to ask, because I was noticing as Carla was sharing her history that it was all female, and I know that that's not typical. So has that been the case for both of you guys?
Yes.
Yes. Now, we've done some
Which is not to say I don't have my inner male and he doesn't have his inner female. You know, we all have both.
We've done some past life regression because we went and got training. After all these things happened to us, we decided we needed to learn more. So we got past life regression training with Dr. Brian Weiss. And certainly we've regressed people who have been male in one life and female in another. I think probably there are reasons for that. Certainly maybe there's a lesson if you either weren't your best self as a male or a female, maybe you needed to experience the other side. Or sometimes you just need to have that different experience. Maybe you need to be the single parent, or you need to have a husband go off to war and lose your husband. Because there are some parts of that lesson that are important for everybody to learn compassion.
Yeah, I just found that extremely interesting because most of the ones that I have done, you see it go back and forth between male and female. So I just found that very interesting that as she was listening to him off, I'm like, oh, female, oh, female, oh, female again, oh, female again. So just found that interesting.
It's funny how we both were going to ask the same question.
Yeah.
We do have a question from Brian in chat. If somebody's interested in figuring out their past lives, what's the best way to go about it?
Well, there's numerous ways. Certainly you could do it the way I did, which is I started meditating and it came as spontaneous memories. If you realize that meditation puts you in contact with your subconscious, you can sort of understand how past life regression works. Hypnosis also puts you in contact with your subconscious. Some people also have memories as they're awakening or falling asleep. So if you think there's a specific emotion tied to a dream or a vision that you're having, that emotion sort of signals that it can be, because again, between that falling asleep and a waking state, you're actually in that subconscious and you're going through beta and theta waves. I can get into some of the medical stuff of it, but it's not near as much fun. But you start to see that as you access the subconscious, your subconscious mind has been recording these all along. You'll find people who say that is the Akashic record that you're actually accessing, but I think it's your soul that carries all of these memories. And then usually somebody asks, well, why don't we all remember all these memories? Well, I don't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. And usually you remember what you had when it was something of a special occasion. So you might... Trauma, your first birthday party, cake. Yes, certainly if you got shot by a mobster named Angelo Genna in Chicago during the 1925s, you're going to remember that memory.
Yeah. And I've always kind of explained it to people that, like you said, all of these memories are locked in your soul, and your soul is always inside of you, but there's too much knowledge for any one soul to shove into a human form in a certain lifetime. So things are like put in a zip file in a box in the corner, And you can access it if you need to, or sometimes things will come out as it's relevant, but for the most part, it's not that knowledge isn't there, it's just not always easily accessible.
Right.
And as long as you realize that it's recorded there's some other things that are really interesting that when they do studies in psychology, we actually record everything in that subconscious mind as usually a positive or a negative experience. So it kind of makes sense. So the first time you touch fire, you realize it's hot. The next time you almost touch fire, you pull back faster because you have it shared in your subconscious memory, so it makes you respond quicker. So those memories are there. They're influencing your decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't have to completely access them and understand them all because they're all shared memories. That's how we grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, someone was saying this, they said, I've had several dreams where I was a soldier in different wars, and in the dreams I almost always am killed. I wonder if those were deaths from my past lives. So what are your thoughts on people dreaming about their past lives, or if they have like a recurring dream, or I'll go a step further and say like an irrational fear? Do you believe that those are from a past life?
We find that frequently is the case. We know that through a regression training with Dr. Weiss and with regressing other people, that they certainly have fears, phobias, anxieties related to their past lives. We regressed a young lady who was scared to death starting in this life with a lot of anxiety when she was placed in an oxygen tent as a toddler. When she got out of the tent the first time, both of her parents actually smoked. So she got out and smelled the smoke. And from that time on, she was petrified of being in tight spaces and petrified of fire. And we found a past life where she was trapped in a building where there was a fire and she jumped out a window. So addressing that, or having it occur in this life and in a past life, addressing it did seem to make it possible for her to actually enter closed buildings. I know it becomes strange, but she actually got to so much anxiety that she was afraid to go into grocery stores where there were multiple people or into buildings that had rooftops and doors except for her own house. And after regression, she started to be able to go back to the grocery store and do those kind of things. I know Carla has you have a couple other regression memories.
Well, that same girl, when we regressed her, we regressed her back to the palace of King Solomon, 1970 BCE, and she was one of his children by one of his concubines. And there were so many thousands of children living there that apparently when it came time to eat, it was a problem. And she was always in fear that she wouldn't get enough to eat, to the point where she would sneak into the kitchen and they would push her back out and tell her no, it wasn't time. But she had a weight problem. And in this life, after we regressed her, she actually went on a diet. She started working out. She lost, 60 pounds or something. And she was able to handle all that too. So, yeah, regression can really help a lot of people.
When did you guys start this journey? Like, how long has it been since the first time you started getting the memories?
It's been about 6 years now, Shay.
Wow. When did you start helping other people regress?
Just in the past 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Wow.
We wrote most of the book just journaling over the first 3 years. We just journaled everything we found out. Then we went for past life regression training. And then we kept just writing and writing, trying to learn everything we could so that we could share with others.
It's very interesting. When most of yours have come from meditating, but did the doctor actually hypnotize you to do the past life regression with you, or not that way?
No, he just trained us. He and his wife actually both were there for the week.
Yep.
And then we split up and we would go on and regress people ourselves. But before we ever went for the training, Dave and I would regress our friends and family together. We always do it like it as a team. And I know that's probably unusual. They don't normally do that, but we work well together. He thinks of things, and then I think of things, and we tell whoever the friend is that how it will be done ahead of time so they know.
Yep. Darren, Darren has a question. Darren just joined us, so just to recap a little bit, Darren wants to know how many past lives can one person have?
You'll hear lots of different opinions on this. Isabella said it's possible to have somewhere in the range of 80 based on the human timeline that Isabella's given us.
Do you think it could be shorter or more or less for different people if they haven't learned what they were supposed to learn when they were here?
Absolutely. There are people now just entering in where this is their first actual incarnation. And there are certainly people that we know that have had 60 lives or something close to that. We have also regressed people that are on number 16. So I think not only can you learn faster in some cases, sometimes the time between lives or the atonement period or the past life review is longer for some people. And so sometimes that time between lives can be very variable. Because of that, I'll even discuss that for a minute. I had the opportunity, since I get to see a lot of things when I'm meditating, to actually go through my own father's past life review. And at the end of his past life reviews, they were showing him that in the 1600s, he was a slave trader. And in that life, he chained people into the hull of his boat and took them from his families and broke up families. In his next life, his daughter was kidnapped and killed, and his wife died during childbirth. And in this life, as my father, really a wonderful man. However, he spent the last 20 years of his life chained in a wheelchair with Parkinson's. And again, they're trying to show us that those people have to learn some of the compassion and some of the lessons that they put other people through.
Mm-hmm.
We have a few more questions in chat from chat here. I'm waiting for Darren to clarify his, but Owen Wilson knows. Is that what that says?
Yeah.
Wants to know, and we covered this a little bit, but can we meet up with past life buddies in future lives?
Absolutely. You're going to continue to follow with your same soul group, family mates, as Kelly was even talking about before. You're going to follow with those people until you no longer have to reincarnate. But then that does mean, again, someday when this cycle stops for everyone, everybody should return and you'll see all of your buddies, friends, family again.
Do you think you meet up in every life, though?
No, you do not meet up in every life, not even close, because what happens is, if you die in infancy, and then the next life you die in war at 20, and then the next life you live to 80 years old, there may be someone from that life where you died as an infant that returns into the life where you're an 80-year-old. But sometimes you get off cycle with people. They're returning when their atonement is over and when they can return back to you. And if you're not returning at the same time, you're going to get off cycle. Now, I do think God controls part of that cycle and how this works. That's why I think Carla and I have been blessed with having 29 lives together. Apparently, we do some things together good. And in this life, God has blessed us with the opportunity to have these lessons and this experience, so we're trying to share it.
Yeah. Sorry. I asked Aaron to clarify his question, and he only made me more confused. So, let's see if Kelly can decipher it. Maybe not.
Are the outcomes different every time, or do they connect to one another at some point?
So
Darren, I think you've got us both confused, hon.
Here, let me try to answer Darren with what I think he wants to know.
Okay.
So if he wants to know, is the outcome when you meet a friend of yours the same in another life? So I can tell you that Carla has been my wife or lover multiple times. She's been my best friend, my next door neighbor. She's been my wife, my mother, my sister in various lives. So I'd say the outcome is not the same in all of those lives. I don't know if that's exactly what he's asking, but it might be.
Yeah, and absolutely. If that's what he's asking, I back that up 100%, because you don't always play the same role. You don't always play the same sex. So, I mean, this time Shay and I are really good friends, but she might have been my wife in one and my husband in another, and, or my child in one. So, based on the fact that you can go back and forth between the sexes and back and forth between the roles, yeah, it's definitely going to be different interactions with the people every time.
Yeah.
And one of the lessons is that love is love, and so you need to realize that that whether they're your friend, your husband, your wife, it's really about love and respect, and that's always the lesson. So it can be about equality if you're married, or equality if you're friends. All of those things are related.
I like what you said earlier about in different lives you're on different sides of things to get the different perspectives, which is kind of how I try to live. I try to always see things from other people's point of view and try to learn, from this. So you get the full picture. So that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. In some way, you have to progress through this, and you have to understand the other side. Again, I'll give you an example. We have a life where I am a crusader during 1150, 50, somewhere in that range. And we also have a time in Spain where it's right after the Muslims take back over Spain, and we're actually Catholic in that life. But in that life, the Muslims don't require the Catholics to change their religion. You just pay a little tax, and you can go on with your life just like you always were, which is a little different than the Crusades, where the Christians went out and started to kill. And then if you talk about Spain after our life, when the Catholic Church took over Spain again, they actually made being Muslim illegal. So you kind of have to look at that and realize that maybe being a part of the Crusades and or at that time when the Muslims actually let you go ahead and be Catholic. Now, it might seem different nowadays because we see so much on television, but I don't think that's mainstream Muslim religion that you see on television either.
So what I've experienced and been told from Spirit also is that sometimes the people that come into your lives throughout the reincarnations, and they may be in multiple reincarnations if you haven't learned what you're supposed to from your interaction with them, not everybody who's brought into your life is to have a good experience with. Some of them are for you to learn how to walk away from those people in that, or that you can't save anybody, or that there's just bad and you have to not let that be a part of you.
Kelly, in our very first life, we had neighbors that were envious of our garden. and a battle ensued. And the man, it was a husband-wife, but the man of that family has been in Dave's and my life 21 times and is currently our next door neighbor.
Well, he was.
Yeah, he just moved.
Yeah, he divorced the same woman.
We have lots of karma with him.
And the reality is we finally had to just completely disassociate because it's not healthy. And that's an important thing for people. You keep following with these people over and over again. If these same people keep suppressing you, pushing you down, injuring or breaking your spirit, it's actually selfish of yourself to not be your best self and walk away.
And that's a very hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, and that's a hard lesson. But that is part of the lesson, even in the book, is that the reality is sometimes you have to walk away from toxic people. And it's even selfish if you let toxic people continue to push you down and or take care of you when you, in all reality, can take care of yourself.
Here's an interesting question. Can you can you be an animal from Darren? Can you be an animal in a past life or future life?
I'm going to answer that no. I know there are other people that believe that that's possible, and I'll get into this. How I told you that sometimes talking about the medical side of this, we've been told that no, animals only have one life. They don't have to learn lessons. Your favorite cat is going straight to heaven and you don't need to worry about that. But the reality is, if reincarnation is part of a normal evolutionary process, it would be highly unlikely that you could have cross-species reincarnation. The receptors in the human body would be different than the receptors in the animal body, and you wouldn't be able to accept the soul of a human. Yeah. Now, other people have different experiences. That's our experience.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, what I usually tell people if they have a different experience than that is that we all need to share our experiences, because we need to be open-minded, because if we don't share our experiences, nobody knows that there's something else out there except what they were taught when they were 5 years old.
Yeah.
And our spirit guides have said that animals live with instinct. They're pure love. And they're here to either love us or help us. They don't create karma for themselves like we do.
I lost my train of thought.
Well, okay, so I can tell you a couple more things anyway.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So this will go down that I was a doctor rabbit hole. So, of course, I looked at all the real research based on this. So if you want to go out there, most of the research done on reincarnation is done with children because they're the less likely to fabricate part of the story. Past life regression is known to have some fantasy involved with it. And so they did studies. Ian Stevenson started way back in the 1960s. Jim Matlock is still doing it. They have 2,400 childhood cases that they believe they have confirmed of reincarnation. The example, the kind of cases that they confirm is they have a young boy who says, where's my wife, Jean? She lives in Smithville, Ohio. And they take him to Smithville, Ohio, and he says, that's my house. And he knocks on the door, and he's 3 years old. And this lady answers the door, and he says, Jean, before I died, I hid $4,000 in the floorboard upstairs in our bedroom. And they all laugh. And the kid, who's 3 years old, runs upstairs, turns right because he knows where the bedroom is, runs, points to a floorboard. They dig up the floorboard, and there's $4,000. Those kind of facts are hard for a 3-year-old to fabricate.
Yeah.
And they also have studied this, and they find that there are certain traits, language habits, and things like that follow through during reincarnation cases. And so they can document these cases, and they have since 1960, and they've been trying to write them up and study them as a scientific approach, trying to take as many variables out as possible. And for me, it's fascinating, and it also was helpful for me to find these kind of cases out there, which means that I wasn't completely crazy when I started to meditate.
As a doctor, I'm sure you must have thought you were like some kind of delusional state. Like, what is going on? Like.
Yes. Well, I started checking the water to see if they were putting drugs in it, those kind of things. But, I was hoping I wasn't having a flashback from my college days or any of those kind of things. But, I was trying to reconcile some of this. And what really happened is we actually started to write a second book, which is called Hell No Reincarnation, where I went through and Carla was trying to help me, and we did as much research on religion as we could, trying to discover where religion, reincarnation, and all of those kind of things sort of cross paths multiple times. Certainly at that time of Jesus, Gnostic Christianity was relatively, I won't say large, but was popular. So that we had the Jewish culture, this new early Christian culture, the Gnostic cultures, and they all sort of cross a little bit there. And there is certainly Kabbalist Jewish who believe in reincarnation. There is a sect of Sufi Muslims called Druze that believe in reincarnation. There's this Gnostic group of Christians, the Cathars, who were a Christian offshoot that believed in reincarnation. And even one of the first bishops of Alexandria, Egypt, who wrote most of the doctrine for the Catholic Church, he included reincarnation and preexistence of the soul before birth as one of his doctrines. And in the year 400 AD, the church excommunicated him, saying that his doctrine was wrong. But it was one of the early church teachings. And then we kept going and going because we were interested. And we found out that, of course, hell has been described by many places. They talk about Sheol if you're Jewish. They talked about Hades if you were Greek. And they also talked about a place called Gehenna, the Valley of Gehenna, which is a valley right outside Jerusalem that they used for their drainage system. And in the Valley of Gehenna, they used to put illegitimate children to death. They used to burn Christians at that time to death. And so it became the place of stinky sewage and death. And it was called
and
Gehenna.
fire.
And fire, because there was spontaneous combustion in the area. And so when the King James Bible was translated, it was translated there were 3 names for hell. It was listed as Gehenna, which is a ditch outside of Jerusalem, Hades, which was a Greek place, and Sheol. And so King James's wife was German. And the German Norths had a pagan god called Helia. And Helia was the pagan god over cemeteries. And so we think to make his wife happy, King James had him change Sheol, Hades, and the Valley of Gehenna all to the name Hell. For Helia, the place of the Greek Norths, the opposite of Valhalla, if you're talking about Norse history. So it's kind of interesting because there's a whole portion that the church has twisted a little bit, or the Bible has twisted a little bit during its some 8,000 versions in the Bible that have existed.
This is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm.
So
go ahead.
So there's a question that was asked by Darren, and I think I know what your answer is. I know what my answer would be, but I just want to ask it because it's a question that, oddly enough, I get a lot from people about, well, if their past life was this, will they be this again? You know. So his question is, if you're a criminal in a past life, does that mean that you're a criminal in your current life?
The answer is no. The real answer is you probably have to feel what it's like to be victimized in some case. So you won't necessarily be a criminal. And you potentially, the real hope is, if you were a criminal in a past life and you went through your past life review, you realized how you injured people, stole from them, coveted what they had. And so you've learned some compassion. So in this life, you're going to make a choice not to be a criminal because you're growing.
Exactly.
So
did you learn your lesson or not?
Did you learn a lesson?
And that's...
Yes. So if you didn't learn that lesson, you may come back a criminal. And you may come back with the same personality, and you may be injurious to people, but you hope that in this next life, you're learning that lesson this time.
Or maybe you'll come back as the victim, and you'll learn.
You might.
That's a possibility, yeah. But it's kind of like taking your driver's test. If you fail it, guess what? You have to take it again. Hopefully you studied and learned a little more, but you got to take it again.
Yeah. Believe it or not, our hour is up. It goes by so quick.
Doesn't it?
Just so I don't forget, though, you guys, where can people find you? I know you have a website, right?
Yep, the website is thegiftofpastlives.com. We have a Facebook page, Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. And I'll leave you with one little thought, because we didn't really talk about how we're leaving this world right now, but we're leaving the world in sometimes not the best condition. And just really realize, if you believe in reincarnation, you're not just leaving this world to your children, you're leaving it to yourself. Start taking care of it.
Oh, good point. I like that. Good point. Thank you guys so much for coming on. This is really interesting. I love hearing different views and different opinions on things. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was a pleasure.
Definitely.
Hold on one quick second here. Kelly, do you want to do some shout-outs for me so I don't mess up anybody's name?
Yeah. then in that case, no. So big thank you tonight for coming in to, of course, Miss Shay, Mama Deb, Matt, Ghost Quest, Mama Pat, Miss Cynthia. I'm scrolling. I think I said Mama Deb, but she's worth mentioning twice in case I missed her. Mr. Darren, of course, thanks for all the questions. Owen Wilson's nose, we appreciate the questions again. Mr. Freddie was in there for a little bit.
Kim's in there listening in the background.
She's lurking.
I, the beholder, I know he's there. If we missed you, we're sorry.
Yeah.
And
that should just go without saying that if I miss you, it's totally not on purpose. Yeah,
that's why I usually do it in the beginning. I just forgot today, so.
No worries. No worries.
If you're not in chat and you listen to this later, thank you very much. Also appreciate that. So.
And all the people listening after the fact.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yes. I will share you guys' website on all the social media too for you. I'll get that out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Make sure you join us next week. Next week we have Jason Hewlett. He's a host of a show that I forget the name of right now. But at least I remembered how to pronounce his name, so I did really good on the name thing tonight. So, but all right, guys. See you next week. Thank you for listening.